Welcome back to another season prediction episode. Today we're talking about the Baylor Bears. Dave Aranda, his staff, they went 12-2 last year, won the Sugar Bowl, won the Big 12. It was really a remarkable season and one that was honestly close to being a college football playoff season. A hiccup at TCU, a loss at Oklahoma State were the reasons why they weren't able to get to that point. But still, a program record for wins, a top 5 finish in the final polls of the year. This program is definitely trending in the right direction. So let's start with the offensive side. They made a change at quarterback. Gary Bohannon is out. The staff decided to go with Blake Shapen for this year, the guy who kind of broke out in the Big 12 championship against a great Oklahoma State defense, started the game 17 for 17. And from that point on, I think it was pretty clear to the staff, at least, that Blake Shapen was going to be the guy for this program going forward. Gary is now at USF. He's going to be the starting quarterback there. And Baylor's moving on with Shapen. And he gives them more of a dynamic threat in the passing game. Gary was not great at extending the field. He was not great at creating explosive plays. So now Shapen will give them a little bit more of that. Jeff Grimes was the head coach at BYU a few years ago where they had Zach Wilson. And I think the expectation is that Blake Shapen can do similar things to what Zach Wilson did that year at BYU. On the offensive line, another area that this is great for any quarterback, right? You return 4 of your 5 starters on the offensive line, including Connor Galvin, Khalil Keith, Jacob Gall, Grant Miller. That's the 4 they return. And I also think from around the program, it seems like that guard position could be an upgrade as well. Xavier Newman-Johnson was a good player, but they got 2 guys that are really going to come in and potentially be better than him in Mose Jeffrey and Micah Maskua. So we'll see how that plays out. But overall, they're going to have a great offensive line, probably a top 5 unit in the entire country along the O-line. At running back, Squirrel Williams, Tay McWilliams, unproven. You lose Abram Smith, Tristan Ebner. You're going to have new faces, guys that no one has heard of. But I think in this wide zone scheme, you can feel pretty comfortable that they're going to be able to run the football, right? You got a great offensive line. You got an established coach with a great scheme. They're going to find someone who can move the chains, score touchdowns, and be a major factor in the run game for Baylor next year. Wide receiver is probably the biggest question mark on the offensive side. You lose Tyquan Thornton, RJ Sneed transferred to Colorado, Drew Estrada, undrafted pickup in the NFL as well. Now you bring in just this new batch of really talented guys, but really unproven as well. Hal Presley, Monterey Baldwin, Josh Cameron, 4-star wide receiver Armani Winfield. Those are the kind of guys that you're going to see contribute for this team next year, along with a few others. You know, you got guys like Seth Jones and Jalen Ellis, other guys who could contribute next season. The good news is tight end is established. You got Ben Sims, who's the best tight end in the Big 12, preseason all Big 12 type of caliber, NFL caliber as well for Ben Sims, and Drake Dabney, a guy who was a very nice contributor for them last year and a big factor in the red zone. Overall, this is going to be a very physical offense, and I think this year they're going to have more of an ability to extend the field and create those big explosive plays. On the defensive side, they return a ton up front. Their 2 deep is all back on the defensive line. They went out, they added Jackson Player out of Tulsa. He was a all-American type player at Tulsa. He's going to fit in pretty nicely as the backup nose tackle and also get a lot of reps at their defensive tackle position along the D-line as well. They're going to be stout up front. Again, another top 5 unit in my eyes on the defensive line for Baylor. You're getting a theme here. They're going to be great in the trenches this upcoming season. Guys, pay attention to Gabe Hall, TJ Franklin as well up front. At linebacker, Dylan Doyle, preseason All-Big 12 guy. He is very, very good at their Mike linebacker spot. They're going to break in a new Will to replace Tristan Ebner. That's going to be probably some combination of Matt Jones, Josh White, Will Williams, with Matt Jones probably having the edge to fill in at that role. Moving on to safety and the star position, right? So the star position last year was Jalen Petrie, who was phenomenal in that role a season ago. That's going to move to Al Walcott this year, who was a cornerback and had the big pick 6 in the Sugar Bowl game against Ole Miss. He'll move to star and should be a very, very good option there to replace him. At other spots, Devin Neal, Devin Lemire look like the guys set in at safety. At corner, a little bit of a question mark. Mark Milton is back with some veteran experience, and Lorando Johnson, a very talented guy. But don't be surprised if some young guys emerge, like a Tevin Williams or a Reggie Bush or an A.J. McCarty at the cornerback spot. Okay, so very stout. I think if you look at the offense and defense, you can tell lots of guys returning. They're going to focus on the trenches, and they're going to be very successful up front. It's more question marks about secondary and the wide receiver position. So let's take a look at the schedule, shall we? The wins I have: Albany, Texas State, at Iowa State, Kansas, Texas Tech, TCU. That's 6 wins. I feel really good about all 6 of those. I think, having some games at home is big. I think the at Iowa State one is a little bit tough, a little tricky there. But overall, I think those are winnable games. And that gets you to 6. All you need is 8 to cover 7.5. They're close calls on the schedule. At BYU, Oklahoma State, at West Virginia, at Oklahoma, Kansas State, at Texas. That's 6 more games. I don't view any of those as walking into the season, it's a loss. I just don't. I think Baylor's good enough to beat any of these teams on the schedule, and I think they're going to be a favorite in most of them as well. My guess, if I were to predict it out, I think they probably win at BYU. I think they beat Oklahoma State at home. I think they win at West Virginia, and I think they win the Kansas State game. That's 4 more wins. Then you're just looking at Texas and at Oklahoma. Toss-ups, I think they probably lose the at Oklahoma game. They might lose the Texas one. Either way, based on my prediction, I think this is a 9-3 or 10-2 team, and I would hammer the over for this team. If you're out there betting, this Baylor team is going to cover that 7.5 total, and they're going to be very, very solid this year once again. So far, 9-3, 10-2 feels about right, and currently they're at 7.5. I think that will change as we get closer to the season. So if you're going to bet it now. Dave Aranda and company definitely have this program moving in a very good direction, and when you can dominate up front on the offensive and defensive lines, you're in for a lot of success in the 2022 season. So thanks for joining this week. That's been a season prediction for Baylor. And I will talk to you later in the week with more season predictions as we get closer to the 2022 football season.